It's 4:30 p.m., May 9th, 1980. Four masked men in a yellow pickup truck are speeding along the hillside roads of California's San Gabriel Mountains until they're forced to stop at a dead end. They rush out of the truck and brace against it, aiming high-caliber automatic rifles towards the road they came from. Behind them, the combined forces of 6 law enforcement agencies are hunting them down. An hour ago, the men tried robbing a local bank more than 25 miles away. They've been running ever since, firing automatic weapons on the open road, detonating explosives, and even taking down a helicopter. Now, they're making their final stand. But how did a 2-minute bank heist in a quiet suburban neighborhood become one of the most violent armed encounters in American law enforcement history? And what did it have to do with the end of the world? George Wayne Smith had an average childhood. He edited his school paper, played tennis, sang in the choir, but he had unusual thoughts. During high school, George would often talk to his girlfriend about wanting to rob an armored vehicle, what it would feel like to end someone's life, and how he wanted them to be like Romeo and Juliet. They married when George was 18, but soon after, he joined the military and was deployed to Germany. 3 months later, a letter arrived. His wife had left him for another man. But at the time, that was the least of his worries. In the late 1970s, relations between the United States and the Soviet Union were growing dangerously tense, with both sides amassing thousands of nuclear weapons. Overseas, George received classified training in the usage of tactical nuclear weapons, and after 2 years of service, he reached a conclusion. Weapons of war are only made for one purpose, and that is to be used. When George returned to the United States, he needed something to deal with the sadness. He joined the Calvary Chapel Church. They believed that the events of today could be matched directly to biblical prophecy, and that signs of an incoming judgment day were everywhere. For someone with classified knowledge about nuclear capabilities, this was a revelation. George was convinced that nuclear war would bring about the end of the world. It was inevitable. In 1973, George was baptized by the Calvary Chapel Church and emboldened with resolve. He would be a soldier of God in the battle against the great demon. That year, George found work in the Cypress Parks Department, where he met Christopher Harvin. In many ways, George and Christopher were opposites, but they shared a passion for survival, guns, and marijuana. During work, George talked to him about the Bible and his big plans for the coming apocalypse. It was close. According to a book he'd read, in 1982, all 9 planets would align on the same side of the sun, altering the Earth's rotation and triggering extraordinary levels of seismic activity. Society would fall into chaos. California would be torn in half. Christopher believed him, so they began to prepare. In the spring of 1979, George, Christopher, and their young families moved into a suburban property in Riverside County, just east of LA. With the money from their jobs, they began fortifying it. They bought dozens of guns, built a bunker with emergency supplies, and even dug an escape tunnel. Inevitably, as the scope of their plans grew, fortifying the property became more expensive, so they built a large greenhouse to sell weed. Unfortunately, George and Christopher's lives fell apart long before that. In 1979, global oil production nosedived in the aftermath of the Iranian Revolution, sending energy prices to record highs. The United States was plunged into a sudden economic downturn, and both George and Christopher lost their jobs, wives, and families. For the next few months, they survived on unemployment checks and random day jobs. But it wasn't enough. One day, George told Christopher that he and an old friend were planning to rob a Denny's. Christopher said it was a ridiculous idea. If it was going to rob anything, it might as well be a bank. It was just a sarcastic comment, but George and Christopher were unemployed. Their mortgage payments were mounting, and the apocalypse was closer every day. Robbing a bank didn't sound like such a bad idea. But before they could even start planning, they needed a crew. If your website survives the apocalypse, it will be thanks to Odoo. Odoo's intuitive and easy-to-use website builder lets you create professional, mobile-friendly websites in just minutes. From there, you can add animations, graphics, and personalize it by simply dragging and dropping elements. Their in-depth analytics help you spot your next growth opportunities easily, and AI is built into the platform, so writing content becomes effortless. Whether you want to sell online, blog, or have live interactions with your customers, Odoo lets you build your website to suit your needs. And the best part is that when your business is ready to grow, Odoo has a fully integrated suite of apps to cover your needs, from accounting to sales and more. Your first Odoo app is free forever with unlimited users. And you can sign up today by scanning this QR code on screen or clicking the top link in the description of this video. The first person George and Christopher recruited for the bank robbery was their friend Manny Delgado. Manny had a young child, a pregnant wife, and a mountain of credit card debt. So when George told him they were robbing a bank, he agreed immediately. As a getaway driver, Manny brought in his 17-year-old brother Billy. Billy suffered from chronic pain, arthritis, and psoriasis, which gave him rashes all over his body. This heist was his way of paying for treatment. And finally, George recruited Christopher's younger brother, Russell, who was months behind on child support and afraid of ending up in jail. Christopher didn't want Russell involved, but George asked him behind his back, and he agreed. With the crew ready, George and Christopher began making plans. To start, they needed guns. In 1980, the average police officer in LA carried a total of 18 rounds for a .38 special revolver. Some patrol cars were equipped with 12-gauge pump shotguns and enough rounds to shoot 4 times. In comparison, the robbers had a .308 HK-91 battle rifle, a .223 HK-93, 2 AR-15s, multiple shotguns, 4 .38 specials, a .45 long Colt revolver, and thousands of rounds of ammunition between them. They even had a katana. Their target would be the Security Pacific Bank branch, located in the intersection of 4th Street and Hamner Avenue, in the city of Norco, where George was actually a customer. Since he was robbing his own bank, he had memorized the layout and the roles of each one of the employees there, and the plan was simple. In the morning, they would rob a van to use as a getaway and plant a bomb in the same jurisdiction as the bank, but a few miles away. The police would be distracted by the explosion, and Billy Maldonado would watch the perimeter while the others robbed the bank. The robbery would take place on a payday, so the vault would be full. After emptying it, they would drive away to a nearby Little League field, where they would stash some vehicles with stolen license plates and drive away in 2 groups. George and Christopher would launder the money in Las Vegas, and if everything went according to plan, they figured they could net up to $300,000, more than $1.1 million in today's money. In the days leading up to the heist, the crew rehearsed their plan and practiced their gun skills. They prepared jungle tape magazines, Molotov cocktails, and makeshift grenades. They were armed as if it was the end of the world. On the morning of May 9th, 1980, George, Christopher, Russell, Manny, and Billy find a dark green van parked outside a mall. It isn't exactly low profile, but it can fit them all. They can't risk the driver reporting the stolen van, so they force him into a small cabinet in the back and cover his head with a grocery bag. At 2 p.m., George goes behind a construction site a mile away from Security Pacific Bank and plants the diversion bomb beneath a natural gas meter. he lights the delay fuse and runs back. In a few minutes, the detonator will start a fire, heating the gas main until it explodes. Every police and emergency vehicle in Norco will race to the scene, leaving the bank unprotected. At 3 p.m., the robbers are parked in the Carl's Jr. across the street from Security Pacific Bank, waiting to hear the sound of police sirens. But they never come. Minutes after they left the construction site, the bomb's detonator had started the fire, but a truck driver passing by saw the flames and extinguished them. Meanwhile, as the robbers blame each other for the bomb's failure, they start doubting the entire plan. But they already kidnapped the van driver, and every additional minute they wait, they're losing money. By 3:15, George is getting impatient, and he makes the decision. They're doing it. The robbers' van comes to a stop outside Security Pacific Bank. Billy stays in the driver's seat, and while George pushes two mothers and their children standing near the entrance out of the way, Christopher, Russell, and Manny get out the back. George hits the timer on his stopwatch, and they open the doors. While the robbers threaten the bank's customers and employees, Christopher leads the bank manager to the vault and forces two tellers to start loading duffel bags with cash. From the inside, the robbers are moving fast, and it looks like their plan is working perfectly. But in reality, it's already falling apart. Just as the robbery was starting, a customer from a bank across the street saw the robbers walking in and ran inside. An employee called the police, and at 3:32 p.m., the Riverside County Sheriff's Station sent out a priority alert.
Riverside to all Norco units, we have a 211 in progress. Security Pacific Bank, 4th and Hamner.
Not 2 seconds later, a deputy responded saying he happened to be exactly there. When the robbers run out of the bank, a patrol car is right in front of them, and without hesitation, they start shooting. The deputy inside puts his car in reverse, takes the wheel and hits the accelerator, positioning himself sideways in the middle of the road. With a few moments to spare, he reaches for the shotgun mount in his dashboard and notices he's been shot. He radios the sheriff's office for support, and they send out another priority alert.
Officer hit, clear the air. We have an 1199.
In California, Police Code 1199 is only used in the utmost of emergencies. It means a police officer requires immediate assistance. So at that moment, every law enforcement officer in Riverside County drops whatever they are doing and rushes to the intersection of 4th Street and Hamner Avenue. Meanwhile, the robbers get back in the van and fire at the deputy from the windows. As they get closer, Billy notices that the deputy is now holding a shotgun. He panics, taking a hard left towards Hamner Avenue, which throws the men in the back off balance and swings the back door open. George manages to pull it shut before anyone falls out. But in that brief moment, the deputy kneels beside his patrol car and fires 4 times. The typical cartridge of a Remington 870 buckshot contains around 27.24-inch lead pellets. As they spread out at over 1,300 feet per second towards the robber's van, most of them miss their mark, but one of them flies straight through the rear window. It misses the kidnapped van driver and everyone in the back of the van. It misses the ammunition, the Molotov cocktails, the beer can bombs, and the bags of cash. But it doesn't completely miss. The pellet flies through the gap between the driver's seat and the headrest and hits 17-year-old Billy Delgado. With no driver, the van drifts into a chain-link fence, and when the 4 remaining robbers realize what has happened, they immediately rush out and fire over 200 rounds at the deputy. They hit him in the upper left shoulder, both forearms, and a major artery in his left elbow. One bullet even grazes his head, but before the deputy is completely overwhelmed, another officer finally arrives from behind him. A few seconds later, yet another officer arrives from the opposite side, pinning the robbers in the middle and forcing them into a defensive position. While one officer helps the wounded deputy behind cover, the other manages to shoot George's legs. With the robbers pinned between two police officers, Billy dead, and more law enforcement on the way, Christopher realizes they need another getaway car. As the other robbers gather their duffel bags and lay down covering fire, he spots a yellow pickup truck along Hamner. When he runs up to it, the driver immediately jumps out. Christopher gets in the driver's seat, Manny beside him, and in the bed, George and Russell are protected by 3-foot-tall steel utility cabinets, perfect for taking cover. Christopher hits the accelerator and makes a 180-degree turn, passing by the third officer while George fires 3 shots at him. He misses, but now the robbers are heading north, and their getaway cars are parked just 1 mile ahead. Getting to them, however, will be a challenge. In the truck's bed, George is unable to stop his leg from bleeding, and Christopher is unlucky enough to come across 2 red lights in heavy traffic. At the second one, he tries to cross the street anyway, but he crashes into the side of an incoming car, temporarily slowing them down. At this point, the robbers haven't crossed paths with any police officers, but just a quarter mile away from their getaways, they spot a patrol car heading south. Acting from instinct, Manny leans out of the passenger window and fires at it with his HK-93. He manages to get a couple of shots in and hit the police officer's leg before Christopher pulls him back in. Without consulting anyone, Christopher decides that they've drawn too much attention to themselves, and they no longer have the time to switch vehicles. Instead of stopping at the Little League field, he drives past it. Now, he was going to the most well-defended place he knew: home. On their way back to George and Christopher's house, the robbers cross paths with multiple police officers. George and Russell fire at them from the bed of the truck, but the officers survive and are able to communicate the robbers' position over the radio. Multiple patrol cars begin chasing them down the suburbs of Riverside County, miraculously avoiding the hail of bullets raining down on them. Even a scout helicopter joins the chase. However, by the time the robbers reach the house, Christopher realizes it might have been a good place to survive the apocalypse, but not the Riverside County Sheriff's Department, and now the California Highway Patrol. Their only choice now is to run. As Christopher hurries toward the nearest major road, multiple police cars chase them down, but George and Russell lay heavy fire on any patrol cars that come near them. Even after the robbers pull some space between them and the police, the scout helicopter soaring above them spots them moving.
Vehicle is still northbound, approaching Highway 60.
Now on the freeway, the robbers take the on-ramp to Interstate I-15, heading north at over 60 miles per hour. Only one patrol car is tailing the robbers now, and the detective inside is stunned to see one of them climbing the side of the truck with a rifle in hand, moving from the passenger seat to the bed. Manny is now also in the back of the truck, firing his AR-15 at the detective, right in the middle of the interstate. At the same time, George takes his makeshift beer can grenades and starts hurling them in his direction. But soon he diverts his attention to the helicopter. 800 feet above the highway chase, the pilot hears the loud whooshing sound of 5.308mm rounds flying past him. But a sixth one makes direct contact with the helicopter, hitting one of its radios and flooding the fuselage with smoke. When it clears out, the pilot looks down and sees a massive hole right between his knees. 2 minutes later, he's forced to make an emergency landing. Meanwhile, on the ground, the robbers are crossing from Riverside County over to San Bernardino. When the officers in that jurisdiction are called in, Deputy D.J. McCarty takes a confiscated M16 from the police station and drives off with another officer toward the robbers at breakneck speed. Since they have the force's only automatic rifle, their task is to reach the front of the pursuit and engage the robbers directly. By now, the combined forces of 6 law enforcement agencies are chasing down the robbers, swerving to avoid traffic, bullets, and beer can grenades. Christopher drives north on Interstate 15, but eventually he heads into the San Gabriel Mountains, where the terrain is uneven and difficult to navigate. Christopher rushes in at over 55 miles per hour, stopping around hard curves to ambush the officers pursuing them. By the time they reach a local village, George has lost a quarter of his blood supply. More than 30 police vehicles are behind them, and a new helicopter is scouting them from the skies. But still, the robbers have a few advantages. Firstly, their weapons and ammunition are far superior to the police. Secondly, beyond this point, the mountain roads are curved and muddy, which favors them. And because they're from different agencies, the helicopter pilot is unable to communicate directly with the officers in front of the chase. His messages have to be relayed by another officer, causing a 15 to 30-second delay between messages. The risk of an ambush is higher than ever, and the officers in front know it, but they also can't let the robbers get too far away. Now more than 10 miles into the canyon, the robbers climb 800 feet to a campground where the roads are gravelly and only wide enough for a single vehicle. A few miles behind them, Deputy DJ McCarty, his partner, and their M16 are zigzagging through police cars, trying to reach the front of the chase. But at an altitude of over 6,000 feet, it is impossible to know what's happening. The tall pine trees obscure the helicopter's vision. They cannot communicate directly with other agencies, and the pickup truck is kicking up dust ahead of them. When the robbers reach a 180-degree turn along the mountainside, Christopher looks back down and sees dozens of patrol cars lined up in a chase. But when he turns to face the road again, he hits the brakes. In front of him, there is a 50-foot pit where the road is supposed to be. There's been a landslide, and the robbers are at a dead end. With nowhere left to go, George, Christopher, Russell, and Manny take cover behind their stolen truck and aim their rifles at the road behind them. On the opposite side, 39-year-old Riverside County Deputy James Evans is driving cautiously around the 180-degree bend. Because of the dust, he can barely see, and before the scout helicopter can warn him that the robbers are waiting for him, they start shooting. Immediately, Evans opens the door and dives out of his vehicle. He blindly fires all 7 rounds in his .38 special, incredibly hitting Christopher in the shoulder blade while he was turned back. At the same time, San Bernardino Deputy McCarty and his partner finally arrive at the scene. As they stop, McCarty spots Christopher peeking over the truck and Deputy Evans reloading. When he rises again, Christopher starts firing and lands a direct shot. Behind him, Deputy McCarty takes a direct hit to the elbow. In a moment of panic, he jumps out of the car unarmed and crawls below it. When he looks up, he sees Jim Evans' body on the ground and finally remembers the M16. He takes it, but when he tries to load the magazine, it falls out. He tries again. It falls out. Frustrated, he slams the M16 into a nearby rock, and the magazine clicks into place. McCarty stands up, closes his eyes, and fires half his magazine. Suddenly, it's silent. The robbers have stopped firing back, so he advances. His partner takes the shotgun in Jim Evans' vehicle, and they both fire at the truck again. Behind them, 2 more officers arrive, and they all regroup to check on Evans. It doesn't take long to realize there's nothing they can do for him. McCarty is badly wounded as well, and his M16 is nearly out of ammunition. No more bullets come his way, so he asks for a cigarette and sits down against Evans' car. The robbers did not try to shoot the officers in this brief moment. Instead, they crossed the dead end on foot and disappeared into the hills. Instead of following them blindly, law enforcement prepared to hunt them down the next day. Back down the trail in Little Creek Village, they gathered hundreds of heavily armed men, including SWAT teams, dog squads, and search and rescue groups. Even the military pitches in with night vision goggles and a gunship. That night, the robbers had to fend for themselves, alone, in the mountains. George Wayne Smith woke up at sunrise in a bloody puddle of rain. He was cold, hungry, and although he'd applied a tourniquet to his leg, he had lost a lot of blood. He hadn't gone far. In fact, he'd even thrown away his rifle because he didn't have the strength to carry it. George cried for help the moment he heard the sound of people nearby. Christopher Harvin didn't get any sleep. His shoulder hurt too much, but he managed to start a fire. Russell Harvin tried burying himself for warmth, but it didn't work. He spotted his brother's campfire from a distance, but when the rain put it out, they couldn't start it again. They wandered around in the night. 4 SWAT officers arrested them in the morning. Manny Delgado ran until his legs didn't let him anymore. Then he walked. The next day, when he heard the sound of helicopters scanning the terrain around him, he hid under some bushes and managed to stay hidden for another day. But on the morning of May 11th, a nearby SWAT team found a trail of fresh boot prints. They called in dogs and helicopters, and within a few hours, they found him hiding from a helicopter. When the SWAT team finally approached him, Manny was holding a revolver. The officers shot him in 6 different places, but his official cause of death was a self-inflicted gunshot wound to the heart. 2 days after it had started, the Norco Shootout was finally over. Before the attacks of September 11th, the Norco Shootout was the largest crime scene in American law enforcement history, spanning a 40-mile route from the Security Pacific Bank branch in Norco to the hills of Mount Baldy in the San Gabriel Mountains. 33 police and multiple civilian vehicles were damaged, and a helicopter was forced to make an emergency landing. 8 law enforcement officers were wounded, along with 12-year-old Robert Oglesby, whose fingertip was shot off while riding his bicycle. 2 out of the 5 robbers were killed, brothers Billy and Manny Delgado. Riverside County Deputy James Evans, 39 years old with a wife and 6 children, lost his life as well. A road in Norco was renamed in his memory. This event was one of the early catalysts for the larger movement of police militarization in the United States. Within days, the San Bernardino County Sheriff's Office added 36 automatic weapons and 40 Mini-14 rifles to its arsenal, as well as an M60 machine gun in one of its helicopters. Since then, more than $7.5 billion worth of military equipment has been sent to thousands of law enforcement agencies across the U.S. In the aftermath of the shootout, George Wayne Smith and brothers Christopher and Russell Harvin were sentenced to life in prison. Christopher is a prisoner in Vacaville, California. His brother Russell died of heart failure while still serving his sentence. And in 2018, George Wayne Smith expressed remorse. "I do have empathy. I am ashamed, embarrassed, and deeply sorry for all that happened on May 9th, 1980. It was a tragedy for everyone, especially to the Evans and Delgado families. Now, more than 45 years after Norco went to war, he remains incarcerated. The end of the world never came."